All right, Jeff. Now, you made a couple of comments earlier this week that had HBCU Twitter in an absolute frenzy. You said that every school in the SWAC is comparing themselves to Jackson State. Now, I guess let's just jump into it. Do you stand on that?
Absolutely. I stand on everything I say, man. That's one thing you're gonna learn about me. I don't do too much backtracking. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll just like own up to it being wrong. But I want to be specific about what I meant. In the clip that kind of took off and had a lot of people in their feelings, it was about football. I'm not talking about academics. I'm not talking about the baseball program. I'm not talking about who got the prettier campus or whose girls look better. I'm talking about football. And when it comes to football, every school is looking at Jackson State. Think about it. They won the SWAC East for the first time in a long time. Then they won the SWAC championship for the first time in a long time. They are the hunted. And not only in that spec, that's just on the field product. But when you add on the field product to valuation in the media accessibility, the marketability, the NIL deals that their players are getting, that is something to look up to. And that's not a bad thing. A lot of people got offended. They're like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. 2 years can't make that much. 2 years can make that big of a difference. Deion, I would ask you, don't you feel like you're a better man now than you were 2 years ago? I certainly think I'm a better man than I was 2 years ago.
Listen, I'll tell you this. One thing about Deion is he's always evolving. He's always evolving. So
exactly.
I think one thing that's been here is I don't think that who I was 2 years ago should solely define who I am today. Yes, it's part of making me who I am, but just for clarity purposes, you're talking about current branding, correct? Like today in 2022.
Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. I can ask here's the thing about HBCU sports. There's podcasts like yourself, myself, different guys on YouTube that have popped up since what? Since the arrival of Deion Sanders. Let's keep it a bean. And who does Deion Sanders coach for? Coach for Jackson State. Now, a lot of people always say, that's Deion's brand and that's not Jackson State's brand. No. That you can't separate the two. They're one and the same because every single time he goes on a Jimmy Fallon, a I Am Athlete, a Dan Patrick show, a Rich Eisen show, or whatever podcast, he goes on all of them. He's the only SWAC coach that goes on all of them, by the way. Don't forget that. On the ESPNs, on the Fox Sports, or whatever. He's the only HBCU coach that goes on all of them. What is he wearing? He's wearing Jackson State. So what does that mean? It means he is Jackson State or he is Jackson State football. And he is quick to always remind you that he is Jackson State football. So when I say they're all trying to be there, I'm not lying. It's the truth. The proof's in the pudding. And then not to mention, he brought in $30 million to the city of Jackson, the actual city of Jackson in Mississippi. Yeah. I don't think any other SWAC school can say the same.
Yeah,
tell me I'm lying.
That's different. Listen, when he said he's bringing facts, this is what he means, right? So one thing I really hate is when Deion leaves, because like I said, we're talking about the current. See, I completely understood what you said. First off, when I heard it, I didn't think it was going to be anything. I just took it as
I didn't either. Everybody thought the same.
So, but I got what you're saying, and even on just an athletic front, I mean, they did win the SWAC, right? And then I do think they have one of the larger brands right now. But I heard one of the things that I heard when people were giving pushback to you was they don't have the same historical, reverence as some of these other schools. So you had conversations about these things. Now that you have talked to others and things, how much does the history of a school weigh when you comparing who's the hunted? Because you have the history and you have the current, and I do think they both play a part. So let's hear what you think about that.
You're right about that. So we can't ignore the history. I can't ignore the history of Southern. I can't ignore the history of Grambling, of course. And really, when we're talking about Grambling, we talk about history because they have the most. They have the best history. They have the historic coach. They have all the championships, et cetera, et cetera. But we're not talking about. But like Grambling, like let's think of it, and they're the only SWAC school that won a Celebration Bowl too. So that's more current. So that also plays a factor. I am not ignoring any of that. But let's be honest. Eddie Robinson coached his last game in 95. Now, Darian, I don't know how old you are, but I was born in 1995. So I know that's almost 30 years ago. I think it was 95, 96, somewhere around there. It's the better part of 25 years ago. So since that, Grambling has been a peaks and valley. And even in those peaks, the peaks is not this. Like, this is a whole new wave. Here's the thing. Yes, you have to consider the history. But when you're breaking barriers and when you're doing things that have never been done, even the great Eddie Robinson can't even say, your brand is bigger. It's bigger than that history. To me, in the current moment, it is bigger than that history. Like, that history is good for its time. But we're in the new age. We're in the age of social media. We're in the age of Twitter, instant gratification. We're in the age of new kids. 95 kids that were born, like Eddie Robinson, like I said, coach's last game, I want to say 95, 96. Folks that were born in 95, 96, aren't even in college anymore for the most part. There's some schools got like these 5th year, 6th year guys, whatever. But so that means the new recruits, the new people that are paying attention to HBCU football, the new people that have gravitated toward your podcast, my podcast, all these different platforms, they have to go read a history book to read about Eddie Robinson. Or go Google what happened with Grambling. You don't have to do that with Prime. You don't have to do that with Jackson State because you're watching it. And even without Deion Sanders, the history of Jackson State is pretty damn good. It's pretty freaking good. When you Walter Payton, 4 Hall of Famers, like their brand was already top 3, I would say, in the SWAC anyway, as far as football programs. I would say Grambling was above them before the addition of Deion Sanders. But Deion Sanders is taking them to a new stratosphere. And that's just and if you can't see that, then you're just blind. Like, you can't see the things that he's doing. And think about it. The current Grambling coach is there because of Prime. Like that. He came out and said, yo, I wouldn't have never took this job. He wouldn't have took his previous job. Tennessee State, his previous job was the offensive coordinator at Tennessee State. The head coach of Tennessee State is Eddie George. Eddie George came out and said, I wouldn't have took this job to be the head coach of Tennessee State if it wasn't for Prime. And then he hires Hugh Jackson, who wouldn't have took the job if it wasn't for Eddie George. And then Hugh Jackson takes the job at Grambling because of what? Because of Prime. Byron Allen, a freaking dang near worth $500 million, said I wouldn't have created HBO Go or bought HBO Go, which is a new streaming service, if it wasn't for Prime. Urban Edge Network, which is coming out with HBCU League Pass, they wouldn't have been created if it wasn't because of what? If it wasn't because of Prime. And all that leads back to what? 1400 Lynch Street. Jackson State just happened to be the team to take the chance on them, and this is what happens. These are the results.
Yeah, and I think just to wrap it up, I think that it needs to be clarified. Like, it's no disrespect to other schools, and it's not to say other schools don't have legacy. It's not even to say the other schools aren't great, because I think FAMU is really building up a squad and really building up a team. So they
can beat them. They can beat Jackson State this fall.
Completely can, and I think that's completely needs to be said, because it's just the fact that when you look at everything that Deion Sanders has brought as far as spotlight to the SWAC, I completely get, and it's current. It is current, and you don't have to agree with him, but you have to just understand that if you're going to disagree, understand he's focusing on the right now and not so much the past. Jeff Lightsy, explosive, didn't back down. Greatly appreciate it. We got to get you back on here another time, my guy.
Hey, no doubt, man. I appreciate you having me on, man. Always.